Hi, I'm JD, and what we're going to be doing today is some graphing of functions. And I'm just going to show you the basics on how to graph using a TI-84 Plus. And over here, I put some functions like y equals x cubed, y equals the absolute value of x plus 3, and a regular line, y equals 2x minus 1. Now, where you want to go is to the y equals screen in order to graph. The y equals is right here. That's what I just pushed. So my first function is going to be x cubed. Now, to get the variable x, you want to push the button that has the x, the t, the theta, and the n. That's your variable button. And depending on what kind of mode you're in, it's going to automatically put that variable. So it's just a good button. Now to get that cubed, use this button right here. It's the caret. It's going to raise it up. And then just push 3 and then enter. Notice that in the screen, that once you push in a function, there's that it's blackened in. That means it's on. So once you hit graph, right there, it's going to appear on your graph. So let me put the other functions in, like the absolute value of x. So to do that, you want to push math, push number, and then abs. Doesn't stand for muscles, it stands for absolute value. So you just click that. Now in TI-84 Plus, the one I have, it sets up the bars automatically. If it doesn't set up the bars, but it says abs and then opens a parenthesis, you have to close the parenthesis for the absolute value. Now to get out of this, whenever you have the bars, just click over and then you're out. And then plus 3. Alright, so then I'm going to type in 2 and then push the variable button for x minus 1. Now since it's a minus 1, make sure that you push this button and not this button. This is a minus, this is a negative sign. And then just push graph and you get the first graph, first curve, second curve, and then third curve. And you're like, oh, it's too busy. I just want to see one at a time. Okay, go back to y equals. Now, if you highlight the equal sign and push enter, notice that's no longer blackened in. That means it's off. And so it's not going to show on the graph. So I'm going to keep to the absolute value. I'm turning off the line and this on top here, and then push graph. Notice what shows up now is just the second function. The absolute value of x plus 3 is the one that shows up. So there's some things that are kind of the basics for graphs. One is the window. The window basically sets your axes, your x-axis and your y-axis, x min and x max. That's the x-axis. This is the minimum amount. This is the max. The scale is what you're counting by. So 1, 2, 3, 4. In the other direction, 0, -1, -2, etc. Same thing with the y's. You kind of don't have to worry about the rest of the guys. They're kind of like, you don't need to know that. So those are kind of the basics. And then you have this handy dandy button right here, which is called zoom. Now, I'm going to show you here. You can zoom in, zoom out. Also, you have zoom standard. Zoom standard, what that does, you push it. It sets it to the default. And the default, go to window, is -10 to 10, and it's counting by 1. And then your y min is -10, y max is 10, and counting by 1. That's standard. That's the default. Now, if you look at the graph, push the graph button, notice that the intervals or the units are not exactly the same. Right? Over here, it is counting by 1, and over here, it is counting by 1, but these ones are much bigger than those. If you kind of want them even Steven, push the zoom button and then go to zoom square. What zoom square does is it makes them all even Steven. Normally when you're checking your answers, you're usually graphing on graphs that have, the boxes are squares. They're evenly spaced. The default on your calculator, they're rectangles. So you might want to use this feature if you're checking your work, because it's going to look more like this when you're graphing it by hand as opposed to the other guy. And once you get and start doing some fancy curves like square roots and all that stuff, then you want to use that. So there's zoom, there's window, and then there's the trace feature. The trace feature is very useful. You hit trace, and this little spider thing appears on the curve. And it goes on the curve like that. What if I had two different ones? So I'm going to go back to y equals, and I'm going to click on the line and then hit graph. Hit trace again. If I click over, it's going to stay on the same curve, same function. But if I click up or down, it switches. It jumps from one function to the next. And then you can kind of click over. Now another thing, hit the trace button. You don't have to do it here, but to use this feature, you have to be in trace mode. I hit a number, x equals 3, and guess what? It finds the y. I can switch it, and then it's on the other curve, and let's say that I want -2. So I push the negative and then 2, and then hit enter. Look at that. It finds the y value for me. Now let me show you what happens if you don't push trace. I'm going to go back to y equals, hit graph again. Now if I don't hit trace, if I just hit some number, it quits out. It just exits out. So clear that. So that's the trace feature. Let me show you another feature. I'm going to turn all these functions on. So all of them have black squares now. They're all darkened in. That means all of them are on. Go to second and then table. Now this is kind of default for the table, but notice that I have my x's. My x's are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What? That's a 5. It looks like a 4. Change that to a 5. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then here's my first function. My second function, these are all the y's. If I click over, there's all my y's as well for the third function. So basically, the table sets up a table where you have all your x's, your input, and then all your y's for the various functions. So this is pretty useful. Now go to tblset. Now notice I have it on, ask and then auto. If I put it on auto, it's going to set everything for me. This is table start. That's the number that's starting at. Let's say instead of starting at 0, I want to start at -3 because that's how I roll. And then this change, this is the numbers it's counting by. So -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. And I go to second and then table, same as a graph. Look, it does it automatically for me. See that? Counts by ones, and then I have all my y's for the other functions. Now let's say if I didn't want that, that kind of does it automatically for me. If I go back to tblset and then I push ask, what ask is going to do, this is independent. You kind of don't want to mess around with this, but with independent you ask, what that's going to do, notice here that there are no x's. I can type in any x that I want and it will find the corresponding y's. So for example, if I want to put in 9, and then it finds all the y's for me. Let's say if I want to put -2.5, it's going to find all those for me. I do have it in fraction mode, so let me go to mode, and then just put auto, quit table. So -1.5, type that in, and does it for me. It's pretty sweet. So those are some basics of graphs, and that's it.